Referring again to the instrument board, I would say it was possibly 10 feet long. In front of this instrument board and extended on adjustable arms from below the board itself were 3 swivel, buck-like seats with backs that would reach to just below a person's shoulder blades for comfortable back support. Situated at the left end of the board, in a tilted position, was a round lens about 2 feet in diameter. This viewer lens or observation reflector was so located that anyone sitting in the bucket seats could swing them into position so as to clearly observe any projections shown without getting up from his seat. At the end of the instrument board near the viewer lens was what looked to me to be a round drum-like table, which was so designed that the top reminded me of a wagon wheel or an astrological wheel, the purpose of which was not pointed out to me at this time. However, at a later meeting I inquired about it, and my brother of Jupiter began to elucidate, using words with which I was entirely unfamiliar. Suddenly he hesitated, realizing I did not comprehend such scientific terms. A smile crossed his handsome face, and the lady of Jupiter interceded. Kelvin would like to understand it, and continued the topic herself, explaining simply that this particular instrument was employed in locating the position of the craft as they traveled through space, whether they were traveling between planets, systems, or galaxies, or within the atmosphere of a planet. At all times this instrument is automatically operating, chart-like disc engaged and disengaging beneath the circular, crystal-like type that map the area of the heavens through which the craft is navigating, so that their whereabouts in space, en route, and destination is instantly determined. Also, by pressing level-like buttons, charts can be inserted of far-off regions of space to which they may be intending to travel. My brother added that it was not difficult to understand, and that sometimes I might be given the opportunity to watch it in operation. Near the undetectable door through which I had entered the room was a small stand with crystal-like top. On the wall above and just beyond this stand was a raised, lifelike picture, portrayed in natural colors, of a radiant and beautifully transcendental countenance. It seemed so animated with life that I stood spellbound, gazing upon it. It was so like a blend of both, I could not decide whether it was a portrait of a man or woman, nor did it show any age, but it was like a reproduction of eternal youth, immortal life. A super being, these brothers and sisters highly respected and divinely honored, who meant more to them than anything in their lives. Deeper and deeper whirled my thoughts, until all at once I became aware that in my absorption I was being impolite to my hostess, and turned in embarrassment to find a strange look of surprise on her comely face, though she did not utter a word. I had beheld their symbol of the supreme deity, the source of all things, whom they glorify in every thought and deed. Upon the wall to the left of the door I had entered was what I shall describe as symbols, which reminded me somewhat of Sanskrit writing. These strange symbols extended up and down the wall to within possibly a foot from the floor and the ceiling. Near the center of this portion of the wall was a raised, life-size picture of a pair of hands, including a part of the forearms. The hands were not clasped in a handshake or grip, but placed lightly, palm to palm. One portion of the right wall, viewing the room from the door through which I had entered, was a section of panels extended perhaps as high up as 8 feet, that appeared to me to be cabinet doors. The other portion of this was so divided as to look like drawers instead of doors, though neither section was fitted with doorknobs or door pulls. I can only surmise what lay behind them. The room, permeated with harmony, was comfortable, elegantly and uniquely furnished, though not lavishly. I doubt there is anything on earth that would compare with it. The lady of Jupiter directed me to follow her, and the 3 of us entered a hallway through a door beneath the mural of the hands. After moving forward several feet, we turned into a room in which the light was quite dim, and I could not see clearly all that I might have otherwise. There was another brother present and standing over in the corner by some instruments, and I was not introduced, nor could I see him plainly as in normal light. I was informed that this large room was where they came for observational purposes. Here a large section of the floor was occupied by a circular, clear magnifying lens, around which were several seats. This huge lens drew into plain view scenes below on the earth or in the atmosphere, which could be projected on a screen on the wall, where everything is clear and accurately defined as to detail. The oval-shaped screen appeared to have a depth of 6 inches and was possibly 10 feet long and nearly that high. I was permitted to look into the huge reflector lens and to view some of space as it was projected onto the screen. Being in the dark of night with fog below, I could only discern the curved outline of the earth beneath a hazy glow. However, I beheld myriads of dust particles in movement out there in space, reflecting light. Many of these minute points of light changed hues. There were also larger, glowing objects, and some that were dark, without illumination. I was given no explanation of what I beheld, other than at some later date I might have the opportunity to see more and have it explained to me. It was not the purpose of this visit aboard to unfold the operation or function of anything I saw. We returned to the control room, and before I knew it we had descended and were hovering that I might alight. I had felt no sensation of the descent or of coming to a stop. With a heavy heart and a great sadness engulfing me, they bade me farewell until next time. I was back on terra firma physically, but a part of me sailed out into the great beyond with my dear friends aboard the spacecraft. On a future trip into outer space, and at thousands of miles altitude, over 200,000 miles distant, I was invited to view the Earth, which appeared to be about 10 feet in diameter, through an optical device, which reminds one of an oscilloscope with a graph placed over the screen. Our planet was prefixed in one of the graph sections and showed up much as a pip does, but larger in circumference. From this distance one could not detect any sign of life whatever upon our globe. It hung out there in the midnight blackness of space like a huge yellowish-white orb, and emanated a dull, hazy glow. However, at a much greater distance out in space, our globe appeared smaller, about 4 feet in diameter, through the optical lens, shedding a sick saffron light against the dark background of space, whereas it should be glowing with brilliant splendor. Viewing it in close, the unbalance on its axis was scarcely noticeable on the graph, but here at the greater distance away our planet seemed to have taken on a definite additional movement, an angular, fluctuating wobble. At no time did I discern the movement we refer to as rotation, only this plainly perceptible staggering like a drunkard. I was quite immersed in and awed at the sight, and suddenly realizing that this was my world, my home, unstable and wobbling in an alarming manner, I was not in the least bit anxious to return to it. This, then, would in general portend the significance of our brother's remark pertaining to more serious matters to contend with than any possibility of a collision with the so-called asteroid. Balance is a fundamental law of the universe, without which worlds leave their courses and all can become confusion. Mankind is governed by the same law of balance. He is the key, the channel through which a planet maintains balance. This unbalanced condition of our planet is something every man should strive to eliminate. To help establish the balance of Earth on its axis and in its orbit, every human being must endeavor to balance the polarities of his own nature and raise the state of his consciousness.